It's been about a month and a half now, and guys, Jedi Survivor still rules so hard. It's been a while since a game invaded my thoughts like this, but I'm still kind of obsessed with this game. I've been engaging with the fan community. I never do that, and in doing so, I've spotted a trend. One name that gets mentioned over and over in many different discussions and many different places. A name I know well, but had never actually seen for myself. Starkiller. Be it suggestions that Starkiller appears as the villain of the next game, speculation that this person in the Ahsoka teaser is Starkiller, or the old favourite question voiced with more or less smug superiority. But could they beat Starkiller though? I fell out of the loop, and I don't like being out of the loop. Who is Starkiller, and why does he always come up in Star Wars discussions? So, Starkiller is the protagonist of Star Wars The Force Unleashed, a series of games that came out just before Disney bought Star Wars and therefore are no longer considered canon. He is the secret apprentice of Darth Vader who, depending on player choices, can either be redeemed or not by the end of each game. I had never played The Force Unleashed. I'd heard a lot about it, obviously, but I just never got around to playing it, and then it was all stricken from the record and I figured, there's not much point anymore. But he keeps coming up. There are people who will insist that Starkiller and The Force Unleashed are the best Star Wars ever made, and will accuse my boy Cal of being nothing but a cheap Starkiller knockoff. That argument felt wrong to me, but I'm thorough. I can't make an argument against it if I don't know Starkiller. So, finally, after all of these years, I played the Force Unleashed games, and I made a shocking discovery, which is that I hate them. Okay, wait. This is a video about whether or not they should bring back Starkiller, not a review of The Force Unleashed. I understand why these games are popular. I get the appeal. I just don't have that appeal. These games are not for me, not in tone, not in genre, and certainly not in writing. But it's mostly the gameplay. I honestly had a much tougher time in The Force Unleashed than I ever did in Fallen Order. I do find these games fascinating, especially in comparison to the Jedi series. There's over a decade between The Force Unleashed and Fallen Order. They are from completely different eras of both Star Wars and video games, and that is really obvious in a bunch of fascinating ways. So let's talk about late noughties era gaming, the end of old Star Wars, and one of the most controversial characters in the entire franchise. This should be fun. Let's start with the different eras of Star Wars. If you don't know these things or need a refresher, here's the deal. In 2012, Disney bought Lucasfilm, and with it, the rights to Star Wars from George Lucas for $4 billion. One of the first things they did when that happened was trash 95% of all Star Wars media. Books, games, comics, animated series, Ewok spin-offs, none of it counts anymore. The only Star Wars stories that could be considered canon would be the 6 movies and the 2008 Clone Wars series. That's it. Everything else was a blank canvas to be painted in again. Why would they do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is obvious. They wanted freedom to do whatever they wanted with their new movies without being married to the names, characters and plot lines laid out in the extended canon novels. No Luke Skywalkers to be found here. The second reason is just that. Star Wars Legends is a total mess of weird and contradictory storylines, characters and ideas authored by 100 different unorganised people. It may seem weird now where we live in the era of the cinematic universe where everything is planned out and every effort is taken to make sure there's no contradictions, but Star Wars Legends predates the cinematic universe. It was generally understood that anything outside of the movies was of pretty nebulous importance. This is still how Star Trek works, for example. There are tons of Star Trek novels, but none of them are considered canon at all. Fun fact, William Shatner wrote a series of 9 separate novels about Captain Kirk and his return to life after the events of Star Trek Generations. But no one is mad at Picard Season 3 for contradicting the Shatnerverse, are they? They are the equivalent of fanfiction with a published logo. They can be good, I'm sure some of the books not written by William Shatner are, but when you read one, you know you're not reading anything that's permanent. Extended media in this system is only loyal to the continuity that it wants to be loyal to. So, for example, if 2 books contradict each other, in one a guy dies and the other they show up without mentioning the death, 2 separate branches of the story are created and it's up to you, the reader, to decide which branch you prefer. This is not the case with modern Star Wars. While the books are sometimes contradicted, like how the Ahsoka novel is sort of contradicted by that Tales of the Jedi short, in broad terms, a lot more care is taken to make sure everything fits nice and snugly into canon. Cobb Vanth, for example, who showed up in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, is a character from one of the Star Wars novels, Aftermath, and Black Chrysanthemum, the big Wookiee, is from the Star Wars comic books. You can like or dislike the quality of any of these stories, we don't talk about battle scars, but the point is that there's a commitment to keeping everything on track. There's actually people at Lucasfilm whose job it is to keep track of Star Wars lore and make sure everything lines up properly. Fallen Order was made 7 years into this new era. It's very tightly written, very planned, very adherent to continuity, and it even gets references in big live-action shows. The Force Unleashed, on the other hand, was released 30 years into the fanfiction era, and it doesn't give any semblance of a crap about sticking to the Star Wars continuity, and in its defense, that is its greatest strength. These games are so weird. Your third mission involves going to a scrap planet to fight droids powered by the Force and a tiny Jedi Master with Dr. Octopus arms who fights you in a weird scrap recreation of the Jedi Council. It's bonkers, and the games only escalate from there. Both of these games can be viewed in comparison to the trends that they are chasing. For the Jedi series, they're obviously going for the Soulsborne style. Big, interconnected worlds, slower, more methodical combat that's all about timing strikes correctly and punishing mistakes, and a bonfire system of checkpoints and strategic saving. The Force Unleashed predates Dark Souls, it even predates Demon's Souls. The Force Unleashed's clear influence is God of War, a linear hack-and-slash action game that's all about bombast and spectacle. Just by looking at screenshots of these two games, you might be tricked into thinking that they play quite similarly. There's a dude in the middle of the screen holding a lightsaber and you hit people with it, but the actual experience of play couldn't be more different. The Jedi games are slow and tactical. Blocking and parrying are key to success. The Force Unleashed is extremely fast-paced. It's about getting in, unleashing a flurry of attacks and wild Force abilities and getting out of there before any attacks land on you. In the Jedi games, you heal with a limited supply of healing items. In The Force Unleashed, you're a vampire who regains health from slain enemies. 6 guys in Jedi Survivor is about equivalent to 30 guys in The Force Unleashed in terms of the minute-to-minute gameplay. That difference in game genre is important because one of the things that defines a video game protagonist is how they play mechanically. Cal Kestis is slow, considered, methodical, and most importantly, fragile. 1 or 2 hits will take him down. He always needs to be on his guard. Starkiller is a force of nature, tearing through enemies by the hundreds with reckless speed and ferocity, and that truth mechanically is also true for both characters' personalities. Okay, here's where I get a bit mean. Video game writing has come a long way since 2008. The way we talk about stories in games has changed massively to the way it was. The Force Unleashed comes from an era where a game's story just isn't considered that important to a game's appeal. The Jedi games are, yes, games with a lot of mechanical competence, but they're also stories. Long stories with themes and subtlety and nuance and a diverse cast. The Force Unleashed games have a story, but the story is not the appeal. This is the appeal. Force Unleashed is paper thin. It's there to string you through a bunch of cool set pieces and ridiculous action boss fights. The characters, with one major exception, are basically interchangeable, with personality shining through thanks to charismatic performances, particularly Cully Fredrickson as Ram Kota, rather than any depth in the script. This is not uncommon for games at the time, especially in this genre. Kratos himself is not a particularly deep character in the original God of War games, but he's carried by a good performance. The definition of what a good story in a game means has changed since 2008. In 2008, good performances and visually stunning cutscenes were enough to class as a good story. In 2023, people have come to expect a lot more from their game stories. And I am one of these people. But that's not the only reason I dislike these games. Let's just say lack of story complexity is not the only thing that dates this series. 2008 was a very different era of gaming in general. 2008, the 360 generation, was the era of the bro. Video games have come a long way, but in 2008, video games were almost exclusively made for and marketed towards young men. Thus, the age of the bro. And The Force Unleashed represents just the absolute epitome of what that design and that culture looks like. Let's start with women, shall we? There are 4 female characters in the first game, one of which is a 16-year-old Princess Leia, so she gets a pass. Shaak Ti shows up as a survivor of Order 66, dressed like this, along with her Padawan, Maris Brood, dressed like this. And then finally there's your pilot, Juno Eclipse, who's dressed like this. Are you seeing the theme here? All three of these characters are designed to be, more than anything else, sexy, attractive to the dude bro playing the game, and their characters are pretty meaningless beyond that. I mean, this is a real, genuine line of dialogue in the game.
This planet is evil. It corrupted me. But you can save me.
Hot tip, fellas, if a girl ever says that you can save her, run away. Juno Eclipse is the worst by far. She is the perfect example of the way women were written in this era of games, meaning badly. She only exists to stroke the player's ego, be the emotional anchor for the broody bad boy hero, and look hot while doing it. She has no definable effect on the plot. She could be replaced by an autopilot system and the plot would not change in any way. She catches Starkiller talking to Darth Vader, revealing he's been secretly evil this whole time, and she's mad at him for a whole 30 seconds, before deciding that actually this moody guy who's never shown her an ounce of charm is pretty hot, and she gives him a big smooch. I'm honestly a little mad that I hadn't played this before my Jedi Survivor romance video, because this is just such a perfect example of the way game romances used to be done. There's no chemistry at all, there's barely even flirting. Starkiller saves her life at some point, and I guess that's supposed to mean they're in love now. Ramkota says at the end of the game that she was the entire reason for his redemption if you choose that ending, but there's no emotional weight behind that because we never see him be anything more than cordial to her at maximum. She's written as a love interest and not as a character. Her role in the plot is to fall in love with the hero, so that's what she does. She has this ridiculously complex backstory hidden in the logs, but you certainly wouldn't know it from her actions in the games. This is elevated to comical absurdity in the second game, where Starkiller's entire motivation is finding and saving Juno because she gets kidnapped by Vader as a trap. The two of them barely exchange 2 words in the whole game, and yet it's supposed to be the centerpiece of the narrative. And all of this brings us to the man himself, Starkiller. Back in the day, I remember a meme that circled around video game groups with more or less sincerity depending on the person sharing it, and it was about how all video game protagonists basically look the same. Here is video game protagonist man. He's a white man with a shaved head with a sort of crew cut. He has some distinguishing scars, and most importantly, he's very angry. We're talking Alex Mason, or better yet, Darius Mason. We're talking Nico Bellic and the Baker guy. We're talking Jimmy Hopkins. We're talking Soap McTavish. We're talking Default Commander Shepard. We're talking that guy from Too Human, who I don't know the name of because no one has played or remembers Too Human. We're talking Agent 47. We're talking Kratos. We're talking my old pal Jimmy, a different Jimmy from the other Jimmy. We're talking Cole McGrath. We're talking Marcus Phoenix. Under that helmet, we're even talking Master Chief. You get the idea. Obviously, I'm not saying all of these characters are the same. I like some of these characters a lot, but there's certainly a lot of crossover. Starkiller, though, is like the final fusion of this idea of a game protagonist. He is the ultimate late noughties angry video game man, to the point where I almost feel like it has to be intentional. He is every stereotype about this kind of character wrapped into one. He's always angry and yelling, he's impulsive and rash, he's an extremely powerful chosen one figure, and, oh boy, he's just so fucking cool, bro. My language is very specific. Starkiller is not cool. He's so fucking cool, bro. Everything about him is designed to be as cool as possible in an extremely 2000s way that honestly dates the game even more than the casual misogyny. The way he constantly has a scowl on his face, his cavalier attitude towards absolutely everything, the fact that every one of his outfits is absolutely covered in belts and buckles, and oh my golly gee, his combat finishers. He's a renegade who doesn't play by your rules, and he'll destroy anyone in his way, good or bad, because the only team that matters is him and his sexy Imperial pilot girlfriend. Even the fact that his name is Starkiller, which I know was the original draft name for Luke Skywalker, but it was changed for a reason back then, okay? He is so much, to the point where playing this game for the first time in 2023, it feels like parody. But at the time, this was sincerely cool, at least to the game bros who were the target audience, this was sincerely cool. Every single animation in the game is designed this way, not just those combat finishers, the way he blasts open doors with the Force. The very deliberate way he holds his lightsabers backwards is such an obvious look how cool I am flourish. Not just reverse handled like Ahsoka, but specifically always backwards, holding it behind his body in a way that makes no practical sense at all. Like if he flinches, he's gonna get some serious burns all down the back of his arm. He wouldn't flinch though, would he? Because he's so fucking cool, bro. My absolute favourite detail is that he has this little hand wave animation whenever opening doors, like he's using the force to open them like a nonchalant badass. But the doors are automatic, the enemies walk through them all the time, so he's just waving his hand like a little baby at Tesco, and I love that for him. He's just having fun. I know I'm saying all of this in a derogatory way. I'm sorry. If you think Starkiller is the coolest guy ever, willpower to you. Coolness is arbitrary anyway. He is the ultimate edgelord. He even looks like the guy who is the ultimate edgelord meme. And again, if you think that's cool, if you've been studying the blade, that's fine. But I reserve the right to find it kind of funny. Regardless of what I think, people like this character, people think he's genuinely cool, people want him to return to the official Star Wars continuity. Should he? I mean, no. Obviously not. You knew I was going to say that before you even clicked the video. But why not? Why would it be so bad to bring back Starkiller? Let's start with the obvious one. Starkiller's story no longer fits into canon. That's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's worth going over anyway. The Force Unleashed posits that the Rebel Alliance started because Darth Vader and Palpatine secretly conspired to bring dissidents together and kill them all at once, but it backfired because they underestimated Starkiller. In the new canon, the Rebel Alliance was created by unifying a bunch of disparate rebel factions across the galaxy via a vast underground network run by Luthen Rael and funded by Mon Mothma. I like the new canon version much better personally because it gives the rebels some actual agency in their own rebellion, but regardless, that aspect of Starkiller's story no longer works. Starkiller being Darth Vader's secret apprentice could still fit if you squint, but his role in the modern stories has already been thoroughly replaced by the Inquisitors. There's other details as well, like the cloning facilities on Kamino in modern canon were destroyed during the Bad Batch, and how Shaak Ti died during Order 66 in modern canon, which brings her death scene count up to 5. You go, girl. This isn't a deal breaker. Other characters have made the jump from Legends back to canon despite massive changes to their stories, Thrawn being the most obvious example. The most commonly suggested idea is to bring Starkiller back as an Inquisitor, melding new and old canon. But this isn't can they bring him back. Of course they can do whatever they want. This is should they, and the bigger issue is that Starkiller's whole deal just does not mesh with modern Star Wars. The Force Unleashed is Star Wars God of War, and like the original God of War series, it is absolutely full of shonen anime scales of total batshit nonsense when it comes to power levels. The things Starkiller does in this series are completely insane. He pulls a Star Destroyer out of the sky, he dives 6,000 feet and lands on a soft-cushioned spaceship to break his fall. He learns Force Lightning off-screen as a tutorial prompt. Having him be this massively powerful is fine within the bounds of his own series. It's necessary for the gameplay they're going for. You need to be this powerful to capture that God of War feeling. And it was fine when The Force Unleashed originally came out, when continuity just wasn't that important to Star Wars outside of the movies and the one show that they actually cared about. But this level of massive power scaling just doesn't fit within the new world of Star Wars, where every effort is made to keep things more grounded and within the more clearly defined rules. The Force Unleashed portrays Jedi as gods among men, stretching every ability we've ever seen a Jedi do in the series to its absolute maximum level of lunacy, and that's just not the vibe Star Wars is going for with its modern Jedi. They are people first and space wizards second. And this level of power just isn't suited to telling dramatic stories in the Star Wars universe. If this one guy can single-handedly destroy a ship with a crew of 40,000, what are even the stakes? This rebellion should be victorious in about 10 minutes. So, let's just depower Starkiller. Bring him down to the level of a space wizard instead of a space god. Well, you'll annoy a lot of people because Starkiller is so defined by his massive amounts of anime bullshit. But more importantly, if you take away that power, what exactly are you left with? Okay, look, I've been dancing around this idea the whole time, but here are the facts. Starkiller is not a character. He's an idea. He's so not a character that he literally dies and comes back as a clone, and nobody really cares because who he is not important. What he does is important. And what he does is zap zap kapow stormtroopers.
You still don't believe that I'm a clone?
I don't know. But I'm beginning to think it doesn't matter.
The Force Unleashed games are not about Starkiller in the way that the Jedi games are about Cal Kestis. Cal Kestis goes on a journey throughout the games. He has an arc, he learns lessons, and we're along for the ride with him. Starkiller is a vessel. He exists to make us, the player, feel like a badass space gods. Nothing about the story of either Force Unleashed game would change at all if Starkiller never spoke a single line of dialogue, because the story is just a string of action set pieces to go through. This isn't uncommon for games at the time. This is how games used to be written. It used to be common wisdom that the player should always be the main character. Your Call of Duty character has a name, but their name is irrelevant because they're you. Master Chief has a voice, but no face, because he's you. The landscape of gaming is very different to how it was. We're in the era of the character-driven game, where the character is just as important as the game around them. Some of those older characters have made that shift. Master Chief, and even Kratos himself, are figures of pathos and emotions beyond anger and badass. They've evolved with the landscape around them. Could Starkiller make that shift as well? Sure, Sam Witwer's a good actor, even if his performance is all over the place in this series. But why? What would we gain from doing that? Bringing Starkiller back into canon means changing everything about what he is, toning down his power and injecting him with some kind of personality and story arc beyond the most baseline traits like angry and sassy. You're already pissing off most fans of the character by doing that. He may as well be a new character entirely. And to tell what story? The melodrama of being trained and brainwashed by Darth Vader? Well, we already got a thorough exploration of that with Trilla and Fallen Order. The drama of trying to fight against the Empire as a Jedi in a time when the Jedi are extinct. That's all of Star Wars Rebels, and a lot of Jedi Survivor too. The emotional and heartfelt love story? Legitimately, Twilight is a better love story than The Force Unleashed. My point here is not that I hate Starkiller and don't want him to come back. Believe it or not, after all of this, I don't hate Starkiller. I think in terms of the story that The Force Unleashed was trying to tell, he was the right man for the job. My point is that with the way Star Wars and video games in general have changed, there's just no room for a character like Starkiller anymore. And any attempt to put him back in anyway would just be unsatisfying for everyone involved. Now, does that mean they'll never do it? Of course not. We're going to be getting Star Wars for the rest of our lives. It's only a matter of time until some writer or director or game designer decides they have a good idea and decides to pull him out of desperation. There's a list of Legends characters to pull out before we get to Starkiller, like Kyle Katarn or Mara Jade or Dash Rendar, but we'll get there eventually. We got a Ramkota Easter egg in Kenobi, so I'm sure it's only a matter of time. It probably won't be very good, and nobody will be happy. But that's just what being a Star Wars fan is like, isn't it? You win some, you lose some.
You had such promise. You could have been my successor, my equal. But now... But I may still have some small use for you. I still have enemies to find and destroy. You will do my bidding until I find a new apprentice. And then, like Vader, you will be cast aside.
Thank you for watching. I'm sorry if I was too mean in this one. I was really trying not to be, I swear. And a very special thank you to my patrons for supporting the things I do. If you'd like to see your name up here or get access to exclusive videos, you can find that link in the description below, as well as a like, a comment, a share, and a subscribe. I have so many Star Wars videos to choose from, so if I have to recommend any, I guess I'll recommend this one on Jedi Survivor or this one on Star Wars Andor. They're both orange. I'm going through an orange phase recently.